Hi. This is chapter 53, Population Ecology. So let's get to it. Oops, if my computer's gonna work. There we go. So a quick introduction about population, and actually let's just show everything. Population, basically, it's talking about a group of individual of a specific one single species living in the same general area. So we're talking about the same species. It could be all the Mickey Mouse family. It could be all the human race. It could be all the bees. It could be a lot of stuff. But it has to be one single species. And basically, there's two things that we're interested about. One is the density of the population. The other one is the dispersion of the population. Density talks about you guys know how to calculate. If you don't know, you count all the individuals that's within the area and divide by the area. That will give you the density. Higher density means there's more individuals within that area. Okay. Dispersion, patterns of space between individual. And this is interesting because, well, in a little bit we're going to talk about it. Okay. So, this is kind of how we generally determine the population size and density. You could either count literally everything, okay, and you mark every single one of individual that's within the area, or you can do random sampling. So you mark off a tiny area out of this entire place, and then you count how many are there, and you multiply. Okay, or there's other way as well, but that's called random sampling. A mark capture method, basically, it's kind of like catch and release, but you mark every single animal that you catch. This way you have an idea of like how many you have catch and how often you can catch it. So that's a three different way to determine population size and density of a species. Sorry. Okay, pattern of dispersal are interesting because there's three different types. So we have clumped, which is what you can see right here, the sea stars. They usually clump together, and then they are kind of like just living within their family. You can almost think that way. And this is most common because you kind of wanted to get close to the resources. So all the individuals kind of get together in the around the resources. Second one's uniform. Uniform. This one's kind of weird because um, we're talking about the the penguin dad is trying to protect other penguins to try to eat the eggs or try to destroy the eggs. So that's the reason why we kind of disperse very uniform, very evenly. So this way, there's um, not much of like anger behavior towards each other. So that's uniform. Oh, another thing that we kind of talked about before, it was I think it was chapter 51. We talk about how the birds would just stand or sit on their island and not allow other birds to kind of attack them. That's the same thing. Okay, uniform dispersion. And then the last thing, it's a random dispersion. Okay, this happens kind of whenever we're dealing with grass. You can see like there is not one specific way that this weed or this grass grow. It's just kind of like everywhere, and sometimes it's patchy on the left hand side, sometimes patchy on the right hand side, etc., etc., etc. But there's not really one specific way that this grass is growing. Now, this is talking about demographic. Demographic, basically, we're talking about vital statistics that affects population size. So we're talking about birth and death. That's the two key things that we're talking about. And we usually organize demographic or a study into a life table, which allow us to see any survival pattern within the population. And also, besides life table, we can also create a survivorship curve. And survivorship curve we'll talk about just a little bit. And the next slide, it's actually an example of life table. So this is the life table, usually split between the male and female. And you can tell there's different there's different age group right here. Okay, and then the number of individual, how many years they live, and then also the death rate. Okay, so basically this way we can see what is going on with this population, how many are surviving at the beginning, I mean throughout the year, how many has died within this year. This way you have an idea of how things are progress. This is a survivorship curve. So type 1, it's basically very human-like. Okay, you have very low death rate at the very early stage of life. Okay, baby usually don't die because we take care of them. So you live for a very long time, and then you slowly die when it grows to older age. Okay, that's type 1. Type 2, it's baby just not baby. The entire species just kind of dies slowly as time goes on. So as you can see, it dies slowly. This is like number decreasing as the population gets older. And then the third type 3 curve, this one's actually kind of common. Okay, you have a lot of individual at the beginning, and a lot of them die off, and whatever that didn't die off survive for a long time. So you basically have a huge population change at the very beginning, and then that's kind of like steady out. And then curve 1, the big difference between these two is you have a huge survival rate at the very beginning, and then you die off at the end. Okay. Life history. Life history is basically talking about 3 different traits that affects whether an organism or individual or species able to reproduce or survive and survive. Um, First thing is the age of sexual maturity. So how early or late can an organism start reproducing? Okay. Second one is how often this organism reproduce. Third one is the number of offspring during each reproduction event. Okay. And this might seem like something that the animals and the organisms have control of, but in reality, these are evolutionary outcomes. And whenever we're talking about evolutionary, we need to keep in mind that evolution is actually completely random, and it's always whatever it's here, it's because it fit the fitness of the time. Okay, so the animal actually survived because they were the fittest at the time. So they didn't actually choose. It was, oh, okay, I'm gonna have a lower sexual maturity. It just happened that these type of animal have a lower or higher sexual maturity, and so on and so forth with number 2 and number 3. So this is actually evolutionary outcome. They don't have a choice in any of these. Okay, so now we talk about a few different ways that animal produces itself. Semoparity. So it's kind of like, actually a lot of plants does this. Okay, agave plant right here on the left hand side, left hand side. Sorry, right hand side. A lot of plant does this. They have a huge reproduction. Okay, and they produce tons and tons and tons, or not tons, but so many offspring. For example, one more, I guess, easier to relate one. It's acorn. Okay, so you will see a lot of acorns because they want to create a lot of offspring. Okay, but it's not it's not as advantageous because when they do this, they're usually within a less stable environment. Okay, so in some cases, offsprings will survive. Okay. In many cases, offspring will die off. Okay, and because they think about it this way, because they collect so much energy and trying to produce their offspring, the individual usually dies right after they they reproduce. Okay, they usually will go away because they just use so much energy while during the reproduction period. This is the second one. Sorry, enteroparity. Okay, this is talking about you have a repeated reproduction. Okay, but you have fewer offspring, but these offsprings are often larger. Okay, by large I mean the semiparity, this one, usually talking about this offspring is very small and they have to grow up by themselves. Literal parity is talking about offspring has grown up a little bit. As you can see on the right hand side, the lizard is not like a small tiny egg and small tiny lizard. It actually shows up. I mean, it's smaller, but it's not that small. Okay, and whenever organisms are in this kind of environment, it's usually a slightly more stable environment. It's not as dangerous for the offspring. Okay, so it's kind of important. It's not kind of important. It is important to know that the survival rate of heteroparity of the offspring and repeated reproduction when sources are limited. Okay, this only happen not only happen. This happens most often when resources are limited. So this way they cannot afford to produce a lot of offspring at one time because for sure the offspring will die off because the resources are limited. And this is the change in reproduction population size. So you have change of number of population size as n, and t is time, and then b is birth rate, and then d is how many individuals that died. Okay, so this is change of population size divided by change of time equals to birth minus death. Okay, I'm gonna stop right here and I'm gonna pick up in video 2, well part 2 of this video. See y'all!